I'm coming at you this morning live right in my sanctuary. You can see the stained glass behind me right here in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. And I'm excited to spend this hour with you. Now, I don't know if any of you were able to see Allison McWilliams' segment yesterday, but for those of you who did, it was fantastic. And she talked about change and career kind of pivots from a very nuts and bolts perspective, some really strategic thinking and very detailed analysis of what you need to do in order to put a change in place. And I want to build on what Allison offered yesterday and kind of take it on a broad perspective about pivot and change, not only from a career perspective, but from finding purpose in life and making life changes as well. So let me share my screen so we can get started. Right. So the title today, as you can see, is Taking the Road Never Traveled. 9 steps to tweak or change your career path. Let's see, wait, by me. So most of you are familiar with, let's see if I can't get this to change. There you go. Most of you are familiar with the title, probably the idea of the road never traveled. It's from the last part of a very famous poem by Robert Frost called The Road Not Taken. I bet you remember this line: 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, I bet that resonates with a lot of you. Many of us have taken the road less traveled. We've hit forks in the road, and we've chosen maybe the road less traveled, the harder one. Today, I want to not only talk about the road less traveled, I want to talk about the road never traveled. These are those points in life where we have to build our own road. Or as Dr. King said, we need to make a way out of no way. So many times we end up hitting a roadblock where we just don't see our way ahead, and we just have to make our own road. And that's really been my life in a nutshell. So I wanted to start out with just a few minutes about my kind of crazy career trajectory and how that happened. Maybe this will resonate with you, just the stories themselves. And maybe you might find a little learning, a little insight for your own choices in your life as we kind of track how this all happened for me. It all started when I was about 6, back in the Southern Baptist Church days in Charlotte, North Carolina. I actually, just a qualifier, I'm an American Baptist preacher now. Southern Baptists don't ordain women, still to this day. But I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church, and one of my favorite things to do when I was about 6 or 7 was take all my stuffed animals, shove them in the corner on Saturday night, and preach to them. I would take the Sunday school lesson, and I'd make up a sermon. And at that stage of the game, it was also pretty clear that I was a little comedian, like the class clown. I liked to make people laugh. And so there were these funny little sermons that I'd make up, and loved doing it. Unfortunately, as life goes on, within that kind of time frame, 6 or 7 years old, I was also told very clearly that women aren't allowed to preach. So when you're 6, you don't really know how to argue down the establishment. Maybe this resonates with some of you, where you've just been told, no, you can't go down this road. No, this is not appropriate for you. So sadly, I pulled off that dream, and I took the same skill set and I just put it in another career. So fast forward 20 years later, and ta-da, I graduate from Wake Forest Law School. And there I am, studying for the bar. You can kind of tell from my facial expression, this might not be the career that I will stay in the rest of my life. Some of you who might be lawyers, have gone through the bar exam, know what I'm talking about. But I ended up staying a trial lawyer for 10 years. Even in the law, though, I kept feeling this unrest, this sort of undertow, like at the beach, when you feel the tides pulling you out, that there was something else, that I was still being pulled back to that old call. And so about at the end of 10 years, I got caught in a corporate buyout. And there was a moment where I could either stay where I was, bank the money and keep doing what I was doing, or I could jump ship. I could spend every dollar of it, go to seminary, maybe take a trip that I've been wanting to take, and completely change careers. And I know this sounds like a ridiculously privileged quandary, and it was. I admit it. But I will say it was a very difficult time in my life. I was going through a divorce. All my friends were married. All my friends were starting to have kids. You know, they were all in partnership for the law firm. So to pull out at that point, honestly, because I was in such a tenuous point myself, it was easier to leave than to stay. So scary as it was, I jumped ship and I left, put everything I had in storage, packed a backpack, and I left the country. So I spent the next year traveling around the world, spent some time in India, as Megan said, working for Mother Teresa, spent some time in Nepal, did some trekking around the Everest Base Camp, did an archaeological dig in Israel, went to Ephesus, spent some time in Turkey, sat by the Ganges River and talked philosophy with my friend Baba Jew here. And then I got home, wasn't ready to start seminary, took that backpack, threw it in the back of my Jeep Wrangler, and I drove to Alaska. Now, why did I do this? Was this just a wild 2-year vacation? Kind of, partly. But more so, I realized that if I was going to go into religion, I needed to have a world platform. I needed to be informed about a global perspective on not just cultures, but also religions, ethnicities, the way people engage the world, language. And so I used this trip to see the world, to get a broader perspective on my brothers and sisters, so that when I preach, I come off a world platform. I think that's critical these days. It's in any position. And so when I finished the trip, I came home and went to Seminary at Union. Fast forward, here I am in the sanctuary with this really beautiful church. So here's my career right now. I am the pastor of a church here in Manhattan. I'm also a professional stand-up comedian on tour with the Laugh and Peace Tour, which is me, a rabbi, and a Muslim comic. We've been on tour since 2001, 9/11. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But the worlds all came together. You know, it's truly kind of taking the road never traveled, because this is a career path that didn't exist for me in the beginning. And as Robert Frost said, it has made all the difference. And I feel so very blessed. And in thinking back over those years of change, I have, you know, people have asked, how did you do it? Like, what do you need to make a change? And I've identified 9 steps, 9 skill sets that I think were critical for me to be able to face down and kind of lean into this change. It was important for a career change, but it's also important for any change in life. And conveniently, those 9 steps spell trust and leap. I love mnemonics. My congregation is so sick of me going, okay, today's lesson is 5 and it spells, but here you go, trust and leap. So let's jump into step number 1, T, trust, the real you. Now, I'm going to start with a quick little story. Here's an embarrassing photo, but one I'll share because we're family. Back in the day when I was practicing law, I was also singing country music down in Atlanta. That's me with the bad haircut sitting in the middle on the left side. So that was sort of the sign of where that little creative 6-year-old started coming out in the law world. But I was not ready to reel that into the courtroom. So I'd go to court with my little suit, my little rosette, kind of dating myself back in the corporate days of the, you know, rosettes and the blouses and whatever. But I'd go into court, have every verb and noun match. I was just all formal, all masked up, as you can imagine. And then at the end of the day, I'd throw that suit and everything else in the back of the Jeep, and I'd drive to some dark, smoky country bar, and I'd sing country music. Neither world knew about the other one. The law firm and the jury certainly didn't know that I was a country singer. I was scared to tell them. I didn't think it was appropriate. But ironically, I wasn't getting a whole lot of good results from my jury trials because I was so just masked up. I was so wrapped up in being formal and perfect that I wasn't showing who I was. The country world certainly didn't know I was a lawyer, but that all changed one night when I looked up in a break. The lights came up, a place called, I think it was like the Chicken Wire Lodge or something. It was some crazy bar outside of Atlanta. And there was the managing partner of my law firm sitting dead center. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. And he came up and he said, where's that woman on stage? She'd make a great trial lawyer. And you know, it was in that moment I realized what he was saying, that in order to really shine, you've got to bring all of who you are to what you do. I needed to stop checking half of myself at the door of the courthouse. I needed to stop checking half myself at the door of the country bars. All of it needs to come in and be offered to be authentic and fully perform to your best level at any workplace or any job or any career. So you've got to bring the real you. You've got to bring all of who you are to what you do. Many of you have heard the phrase, the imposter syndrome. You know, a lot of us struggle with it. I know I still do. The idea that, oh, I might be found out. Oh, I'm not all that people think I am. You know, it's a scary thing to carry that with you. The problem comes when we give those fears the power to keep us from taking the actions we need to take. Let me show you this slide. I love it. We're scared we'll be found out. I hope to God that's Batman. It's a little cat looking at a fish, but it looks like Batman. Anyway, I love it. It's a scary thing. We carry around this fear that we might be found out, but that is one of the worst, heaviest weights we can carry, and one of the worst things we can do for ourselves is that corrosive self-doubt. So how do we deal with that? Well, I tend to ask myself 3 questions. When that negative voice comes in and starts in, I say, is it true? Number 1, is it true? Now, 99% of the time, it's not true, which leads you to question 2. If it's not true, why do we continue to carry this belief about ourselves? And then you move to question 3, who would we be without it? Those 3 questions can really help tear down some of those negative voices that we carry around. The bottom line is, it's just exhausting to live an inauthentic life. I'll share some words from the comedian and actress Fanny Brice. She said, let the world know you as you are, not as you think you should be, because sooner or later, if you are posing, you will forget the pose, and then where are you? In order to move forward, to engage our best selves, we've got to bring all of who we are to what we do. R, risk. Don't you love this sign? This was in front of a convenience store in Wisconsin near a cabin that my husband and I have way north Wisconsin. Liquor and fireworks. What could go wrong? Risk is scary. Change is scary, you know? So usually instead of moving towards change, we'll hunker down, lock down, surround ourselves with, you know, whatever is the status quo, protect ourselves, and just do nothing. You know, we do that because it feels safe, and I understand that. But even to try to move out of that change from a basic standpoint, like moving from unhappy to happy, is tough. The behavioral psychologist Robert Anthony said, most people would rather be miserable than risk being happy. It's a risk to just step out and stop being miserable. Let me show you this. I love this saying. Fear has 2 meanings. Forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. So what can we do to take risks and encourage ourselves to take risks a little easier? Micro goals. Maybe some of you have read or heard about this being, that's the kind of new buzzword, but the concept's been around for a very long time. The idea of breaking the big goal into tiny micro goals that are easily achievable. I have a picture of me with my motorcycle, Lightning. It's my little Harley. I call her Lightning because she runs like lightning, and I bought her in a lightning storm. But about 15 years ago, when I bought my first bike, I promptly wrecked it. I mean, like, threw it down in a parking lot, hit a guardrail, the whole bit, in front of a policeman. I mean, you're gonna do it big, right? Anyway, the policeman came over and was like, I think you need to keep the training wheels on a little longer. Fair enough. But I have to say that stuck with me, and I couldn't get back on. It took me 10 years to get back on a bike. I was scared. You know, what if I fall off again? What if I embarrass myself again? What will people think? The same things we think when we make a mistake, right? So I broke it into micro goals. I'm like, what's the first thing I can do? I was like, okay, I will go back and take the motorcycle course again, just to take the course and read about it. So I took the course, read, passed the test. Okay, now I'm gonna actually buy a tiny bike that's like the size of a matchstick, like this big, and I'm gonna learn to ride that bike. Learn to ride that bike. Bought a little bigger bike, bought a little bigger bike, bought a little bigger bike, finally got back to the Harley. Micro steps was absolutely the key thing. And we have signs on our church out front on Madison Avenue that we like to put out, inspirational signs, signs that make people think or laugh. I loved this one. It's what we're talking about. The person who moves mountains begins by carrying small stones. You know, this is not some kind of gimmick either. It's not some self-help ploy. In fact, studies have shown that you can trick your brain into increasing dopamine levels, that wonderful feel-good chemical that's in the brain, by setting and achieving tiny, reachable goals. Now, once that happens, those tiny goals, and you start feeling good about those tiny goals, then that inspires you, motivates you to start stringing those tiny goals together for the larger goals. Let me give you some examples. You want to get out of debt? Start with one payment. You want to heal or change a relationship? Start with one compliment a day. You want to become more adventurous? Take a different route home. It's not huge steps that we have to take. It's the little ones to get us started. I mean, you got to try. Why? Because as Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Now, I just threw this slide in there really fast because this morning I saw this incredible article. You might want to, if you have time, Google it. It was on the Today Show, and it's about regrets. It was called The 3 Top Regrets on the Today Show, and I'll share this slide with you. It was by a woman who is she's a former Buddhist monk turned interfaith hospice chaplain. Her name is Tenzing Kiyosaki, and she basically said in her experience as a hospice worker, these are the top 3 regrets that she has heard people say over and over as they face the end of life. Number 1, not living my dreams. Number 2, not showing my love. And number 3, not forgiving. If you don't take anything else away from today, take this. Do not live with regrets. That's the biggest motivator for taking a risk. You do not want to end up in the end of life and think, what if? Those are horrible 2 words to be sitting with. I mean, in the end, you just got to be brave. I just love this sign. No dogs beyond this point, but that little dog's going to make its rebellious stand. Okay, you entrust us versus the world. Never, ever let the world tell you what is possible. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this book, Purple Cow by Seth Godin. I'd highly recommend it. It's been out for a while, but the gist of the book is all about being your unique self. And the quote that I wanted to share with you is, in a busy marketplace, not standing out is the same as being invisible. Not standing out is the same as being individual. We were all given the most wonderful, unique, creative gifts in this life, but the world tends to try and beat it out of us. I mean, like back in the day when I was told I couldn't be a preacher, or, you know, I didn't want to be an artist within the trial world or share music, you know, law and music. You just don't think that you can bring all of it. But if you bring it all, then you start to stand out. Your uniqueness gleams forth. This is my own kind of experience with that. When I entered seminary in the fall, I had this grand plan of being a stand-up comedian and a minister. I was going to change the world with those 2 great things. And it became very evident very quickly that the rest of the world did not think it was that great of a plan. Professors were immediately dismissive about it. Students kind of made fun of it. And then it all came to a head in December of my first semester. Okay, thank you. When a graduate student said to me, whatever you do when you're putting your resume together, don't mention the comedy. You'll never get a job with a legitimate church. So I panicked. We had a break in January. I jumped ship, I ran, I threw everything I had in the Jeep Wrangler, and I just left New York to try to think through if I'd made the worst mistake of my life. Long story short, I ended up on the border of Texas and Mexico in a dust storm. I'm going down the interstate. I don't know what a dust storm is. I'm from North Carolina. What do I know from dust storms? So I take the first exit I can find. And at the bottom of the exit, there's a mobile home with a neon sign flashing boots. Boots. God is good. I can shop in the middle of a dust storm. I go in. Of course, I'm the only person there. And the young woman says, "What are you doing here?" Because there's New York plates on the Jeep. I tend to tell her the whole story. I was a lawyer, now I'm a minister, or I'm in seminary, and I'm also a comedian, but I think I'm gonna, I don't know, starve to death because I'm never gonna find a job. She listened for a second and said, "Well, that's just the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. I know exactly what you need." And she walks in the back room and comes out with the most beautiful pair of cowboy boots I've ever seen in my life. And she says, "These are preaching boots." I'm like, "What are preaching boots?" She goes, "This is what all the fancy radio preachers around here wear. I just sold a pair to a guy the other day, and he said he needs them because when he puts his feet in them, he stands taller and he talks louder." You know, I'm a big believer that God speaks in mysterious ways. This was one of the craziest, but it was like a neon sign had just been dropped to me. You know your call, you know your gifts, quit running. Stop running. You need to stand tall and talk loud. So of course I bought the boots, turned the Jeep back around, went right back to Union, and finished seminary, and here I am. And I never preach in anything but cowboy boots because I remind myself of that moment I almost lost the call because I doubted myself. And these in this photo are my Easter boots, pink for Easter, skulls for the Good Friday, and flames on the toes for Pentecost. Don't you love it? Here, let me share another sign from Madison. Never put the keys to your happiness in somebody else's pocket. Can I have an amen on that? So true. You know, many times people will feel threatened when they're faced with something unique, and to protect themselves, they may try to limit your potential. And I have to say, sometimes these are the people that are closest to us. Just remember that those people who discourage your dreams probably do so because they had their own dreams destroyed. Saying that I always remember: mediocrity attacks excellence. You remember that when somebody's trying to pull you down, somebody's trying to tear you down. Always keep that in your forefront of your mind. So I return to my original statement: not standing out is the same as being invisible. Let me share this quote with you by choreographer Martha Graham. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. If you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. S, shake it up. That plant, while it's not mine, it looks like one of mine. I love plants, but I don't treat them well. And I'm bad about letting them get root bound. I bet if you're a gardener, you know what I mean. If you don't allow for growth, like put them in a bigger pot, then plants just start to shrivel and die. And it's just like people. You know, sometimes we can become root bound. We don't give ourselves room to grow and to kind of shake loose and experience new things. And then we start to shrivel, we start to wilt, we start to even die. I'm reminded of Charles Darwin's words: it's not the strongest of the species that survives or the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change, to the shakeup, to change. But change is scary, as we already talked about in Risk. We don't want to shake it up because we might fail. I love this. Mouth says eat, legs say no. Little puppies. We're all going to fail at one point or another. That's the deal. There's three things in life that are sure: death, taxes, and mistakes. They're going to happen. We just have to change our perspective about making mistakes. I love this quote by Miles Davis: if you hit a bad note, it's the next one you play that makes it good or bad. We all make mistakes. There's just, no good time for a mistake. They're going to happen. But here's the thing: you never know what good might come out of mistake. Let me share my best and probably most public mistake in my ministry. It was the very first high holiday, Easter weekend, and I was asked to do the Lord's Prayer during Good Friday. And I got so nervous that I spliced the Lord's Prayer and the 23rd Psalm together. Like I was on autopilot and I wasn't thinking what I was doing. So here I am, congregation, I'm praying. I'm like, lead us not into the valley. Oh. And the second I did it, I knew I was toast. I was done. And I didn't know what to say. I just froze. And I was like, because it's a bad valley, that valley. And we need to get out of that valley really fast. And all of a sudden I started seeing heads in the congregation go, looking up. And I did the only thing I needed to do, which was bail. And I was like, forever and ever. Amen. I sat down. Coffee hour comes. I was braced because I knew I was going to catch it. And here comes Frida, our most senior member. She's 98 this year. Back then, I think it was like 10 years. No, that was 20 years. Oh my gosh, 20 years ago. Frida was she was a baby at 78. She came up to me and she said, that was the most interesting version of the Lord's Prayer I've ever heard. Thank you. It was so fresh. You don't ever know what good things can come from a mistake, a fresh new perspective. You know, I remember my grandmother, she had a farm up in the North Carolina mountains outside of Brevard, and she grew these Jurassic Park-sized tomatoes. And I remember asking her, I was like, Grandma, how do you get these big old tomatoes? And she just didn't even skip a beat. She goes, oh, chicken poop. And I was like, oh. You know, it took me about, I don't know, several years to want to eat another tomato. But over time, it's dawned on me that's kind of some wonderful life wisdom too. It's not the perfect, beautiful, like pristine things that yield the most growth. It's the messy stuff. It's the chicken poop of life where the most growth can happen, right? There's an ancient tradition in Zen philosophy and Buddhism called kintsugi, where ceramics that are broken are not thrown away, but are repaired with melted gold in order to highlight the break. I just love that idea because we'll make a mistake and we'll try to hide it, or we'll feel all this shame and blame ourselves for this mistake. In this tradition, the breaks are part of the art and they're actually highlighted. And there's no attempt to hide the damage, but they want to highlight the beauty and the strength of the flaws. I love that. We're all going to make mistakes in life. We're going to fail. The question is, do we use it as an excuse or an experience to grow? T, trust. Too late? Ooh, it's a classic excuse. I know when I was thinking about jumping from law and going to the trip and going to seminary, I told my parents, you know, I'm thinking about becoming a minister after 10 years as a trial lawyer. And they couldn't even breathe. They were just like, oh. And I understand that, you know, I mean, after you get engrossed in a career, it's hard to uproot yourself and change. You know, I had every excuse in the book. Oh, it's too late. I'm too engrossed in this career. The opportunity's passed. I'm not up to it. I'd have to relearn too much. It'd be too exhausting, you know, or my favorite, I'm too old. To the excuse of it's too late, I say, never, 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 never. You can chase your dreams at any age, at any time. FX Toole, for example, made his literary debut at age 70, with his first novel being the basis for the movie $1 Million Baby. At 81, Bill Painter became the oldest person to summit 14,000-foot Mount Rainier. At 92, Paul Spangler finished his 14th marathon. And at 95, Nola Ox became the oldest person to receive a college diploma. It reminds me of an article I saw a couple of years ago. Emma Moreno, who at least Guinness claims was the oldest living person, she was 117. She was asked about her secret to longevity, and she said, eating 3 raw eggs a day and staying single, for what that's worth. But there's always that excuse. We just can't do it because, fill in the blank. You know, let me just say this, chasing one's dream is never easy. No one promised that was going to be easy. No one said that chasing your dream was going to make sense. No one said it's going to be this logical flat line. No one says chasing your dream was going to be this perfect continuum. Let me share with you a couple of examples of people who have made major U-turns in their life, in addition to me. You ready? Madonna started working at Dunkin' Donuts. George Clooney was an insurance salesman. Rihanna was a cadet in the US Army. Ellen DeGeneres was a paralegal and oyster shucker. Meghan Markle was a calligrapher. Sylvester Stallone was a lion cage cleaner at the Central Park Zoo. Nicki Minaj she worked at Red Lobster, and Julia Child worked as a covert operative for the CIA. Let me say it again. It's never too late. One of the things that I've learned as a performer and a comedian is that it's the ending of your act that's most important. I mean, you can bomb up front, you can really screw things up, but if you bring it home at the end, if you leave them with your best material, that's what they're going to remember. And it's the same in life. Even if you mess up in the beginning, even if you make choices you regret, or if you give them, if you do things that you're just not so proud of, if you give your best stuff at the end, that's what people are going to remember. Leap, L, let go. I have this picture of a rear view mirror because of a story. Toby, my husband, and I were coming back from the airport, or to the airport in Wyoming after a little vacation. And when you're in a hurry, there's always a line of cars. Well, we were in this line of cars trying to get around, and the front of the line was this old truck, right? And so one by one, the cars went around the truck. Finally, we get up behind the truck, and I couldn't believe what I saw. The truck, beaten up to death, had no outside rear view mirrors and no rear view mirror in the cab. And all you could see was the driver's side seat. You could see no head, and two pointed ears in the passenger side. So we go around the truck, and I look in, and there's this little lady who's, I don't even know how old, but an older little lady sitting like this, driving the truck, laughing and cutting up with a tiny little scraggly dog sitting next to her. And I thought to myself, well, isn't that the greatest thing? They didn't have rear view mirrors to worry about what was behind them. They were just having the best time looking at the road ahead and being present in the moment. Well, tell me that's not a good lesson for life. If we would let go of some of our baggage, let go of some of our rear view mirrors, and just think about what we've got right here in front of us, we might be a whole lot happier. That said, people will try and own us if we let them. Now, why do I have a NASCAR suit up here? Well, I once heard an interview with Jesse Ventura, the ex-governor of Minnesota. And no, I don't always get wisdom from Jesse Ventura. However, this one was pretty powerful. He was talking, this was during an election cycle, and he said in the interview, I think we should make all politicians wear NASCAR suits. And you have to think for a minute, why? Well, look at that NASCAR suit, that image. If you've ever seen one, the sponsors are all over it. So whatever sponsor gives the most money, big, like the Goodrich and that one, that's the biggest sponsor. And Goodrich down the sleeves, and then the sponsors who, little less priority, still all over it. So Ventura says, I think we ought to make politicians wear NASCAR suits because then we know who owns them. Kind of like that. Guess what? I think each of us has a NASCAR suit. And if we looked in the mirror in that NASCAR suit, who owns us? What's the center spot? Where is the most priority? Where's the big priority in our life? What's the next priority, and the next priority, and the next priority? People outside the world, the voices of the world, will try to own you if you let them. They will tell you what is appropriate, what is right, what you should do. And if you allow, they'll become that center spot. But you can't let it happen. You've got to be able to let go of the past, let go of what everyone else is telling you, and stay in the moment with what you've got. It comes down to the great serenity prayer. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, there's a new one out. Now, for our younger viewers, this may not resonate quite as much, but guess what? I'm going to share it anyway because you'll remember down the road that you heard it here. It's called the senility prayer. God grant me the senility to forget those people I never liked anyway, the good fortune to run into those I do like, and the eyesight to tell the difference. There it is. E in leap, earned. You deserve this. I'll tell you straight up, we owe ourselves stormy loyalty. We have earned our own respect. But so many times we don't share that with ourselves. I want to share just a very quick, like 2-paragraph reading from one of my books, a book called Laugh Your Way to Grace. I think to me, this just sort of captures the whole thing. It's a little segment called We've Been Plutoed, just like the planet Pluto you're looking at. Every year, the American Dialect Society picks a word of the year. Past winners include governator in 2003, inspired by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and his role in the movie Terminator, and truthiness in 2005, a word created by Stephen Colbert to describe facts one wishes to be true. My all-time favorite was the winner in 2006. That year, the International Astronomical Union, IAU, decided based on its less than acceptable size and orbit shape, Pluto would be downgraded from a planet to a dwarf planet. Thus was born the term Plutoed, meaning devalued. I felt for little Pluto, I really did. 76 years of being a happy little planet, then overnight, bang, it's nothing. And all because a few individuals decided to tweak the definition of what was necessary to succeed as a planet. I'm sorry, I understand that. I've been Plutoed, I bet you have too. But we owe ourselves stormy loyalty. We need to remember that we've earned our own respect. I like to think of these 3 words in how I go about reminding myself of that. Believe, behave, become. What we believe in our minds about ourselves, about our work, about our life, about our world, what we believe up here over time drives how we behave. And how we behave over time drives who we become. We have to be so careful at the beginning of what we believe because it drives and controls everything. This is what I do, and this is kind of my backup fail-proof plan. Every time or anytime someone writes me a letter, says, oh, thank you for that column you wrote, or I love that sermon, or what you did, XYZ really helped me. I print it and I put it in my Atta Girl file. I've got a little pen that says I heart me on the file. I know it seems really ridiculous and self-serving, but I'm gonna tell you something. Most days are not Atta Girl days. And when I don't have Atta Girl days, I go and I pull something out of the Atta Girl file and I read it and it helps me get through. I highly suggest it. A break. Take one. Change is hard. It's draining emotionally, physically, spiritually. You have got to pace yourself for the long haul. Another sign from our church, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. Now, I, as a comedian, happen to have a little bias towards laughter, so I might suggest to everyone today that you take a laughter break. I love this saying, the secret to living well and longer, eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure. Laughter to me is the key to the whole thing. There's so many elements, healing elements to laughter. Let me share a few. Laughter lowers blood pressure, increases heart and lung functions, and stimulates endorphins. If you remember back when we were talking about the feel-good chemicals in the brain, when we laugh, it stimulates those feel-good chemicals in the brain to raise our mood. It also brings brain power, creative thinking. When we laugh, our left brain and right brain work together to bring both of those powers together at one time. Laughter also brings a fresh perspective and it highlights our commonalities. This is us in our Laugh in Peace tour that I told you about earlier. Me, Rabbi Bob Alper, and Gibran Salim, Muslim comic. We were at actually an event down in North Carolina. And this tour to me is just, I find it such a powerful work because what we do, we don't, proselytize about our religions or, we don't even really talk about politics. We simply share our stories. And in those stories, me, I'm Baptist woman from the South. You know, Bob, a rabbi from Vermont, Gibran from Brooklyn, grew up in Kuwait. You know, the whole thing is all about what we have in common, how our worlds overlap. Because here's the thing, I'm the MC, the Christian chick MC. And when I get up and start the show, there's people from all different religions and walks of life out there. But if I do my job right and I get them to laugh in the first 10 seconds, their worlds overlap. And for a split second, they share something in common because they laugh together at the premise of the joke. I'll give you one example. Bob likes to end the show sometimes with this little story. And keep in mind, this is a rabbi sharing what the religions, or at least Christianity and Judaism, might share in common. Bob shares the story that two rabbis were talking. One says to the other, I don't know how to tell you this, but my son has converted to Christianity. And the second rabbi says, really? My son too. What are we going to do? And the two rabbis think for a minute. And they say, let's talk to God. So the two rabbis go to God. They say to God, both of our sons have converted to Christianity. What are we going to do? And God says, really? My son too. Again, a rabbi offering this in a humorous lens to show what we all might have in common. Now, how do we remind ourselves to laugh and keep that power in our forefront? Well, I say you put stuff everywhere you can see it. A visual reminder is always important. I've got bumper stickers all over my office that I love. God wants spiritual fruits, not religious nuts. God loves you, asterisk, some restrictions apply. And I love this, a bumper sticker that I saw on a car that I bought for myself. Do you follow Jesus this close? This is my Jesus and Tammy Faye Baker earrings given to me by a congregation member. Don't you love it? I love this t-shirt. I wear it at Christmas. It's a girl. There's my Last Supper lunchbox. Every pastor must have one. I love this. It's taped on my wall. Okay, everyone, now listen carefully. I don't want to end up with 4 different versions of this. And a couple of last signs. As I said, some of these are inspirational signs out front, but some of them are just flat funny. What happens in Vegas is forgiven here. I like this one. This one's kind of got a little bit more meat to it. There are people who would love to have your bad days. And my all-time favorite, honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him. You got to remember to laugh and bring that perspective, that physical, emotional, and spiritual rest into your life. Now, last but not least, P, possibilities. Imagine what can happen with a little care and love. Now, why am I showing you an image of the Astor Place Kmart in Midtown Manhattan? Well, here's one. This is about 20 blocks from my house. And every once in a while, I will make a pilgrimage to the Astor Place Kmart because, and believe it or not, in the basement, not on the street level, but on the base, in the basement of this building, the Kmart has a plant nursery. It's just hard to comprehend. Poor little plants under these artificial lights, cinder block walls on 3 sides, and it gets better. Wait, the 4th wall is a glass wall that looks out into the 6 train. So these little plants with no natural light get shaken to their roots and their core every 5 minutes with the 6 train coming by. But I bring them home one every once in a while just to let it die in peace. You know, like I said, I do my best. But one thing I love about these little plants is this is what I love. I'll bring them from the Kmart, put them in my house, and every little plant, as you know, has a little plastic tab. And on that tab is a photograph, an image of what that plant could be, what it could grow into if it had the right care, love, light, and nourishment. And I think that's so true for us. You know, we've got to take care of ourselves when we are looking at change and changing our careers and our lives and moving every day through all the obstacles that we face. We have 2 choices. We can give ourselves the light and air and love and care that we need and blossom into what is our fullest best selves, or we can allow the world to take that away, be like in a nursery in the basement of the Kmart with no natural light, with artificial light and a 6 train shaking us to our core every day. It's our choice. It's within our control. Leave you with this thought. Days pass and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. Sightless among miracles. There's a few questions that I'd love us to think about. And as I post these, I would love to open it up and see, Megan, if you'd like to allow people, if they have questions or comments to share. And then if we could save just 2 minutes at the end, I have a poem I'd like to share. Here are the questions I'd love people to think about. What transitions or opportunities are you facing? What's holding you back? Has the world ever told you that you can't? Who said it? Why? Do you believe you deserve that change? And what micro steps could you take to begin? And what does your personal plant tab look like? I'd love to hear any questions or comments that people would like to share today.
Thank you, Susan. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Susan, I know you were talking, so you didn't see the chat, but we got a lot of agreement and a lot of amens. Somebody just gave you a standing ovation in the chat. I know that's hard to see when you're talking, but you certainly gave folks a lot to think about today.
Thank you. Good. Well, it's my honor. And as I was telling Megan earlier, it makes me feel a little less alone. I feel pretty isolated up here, but it's so great to connect with my Wake Forest alum and folks, and also especially the Wake women. Such a powerful group of folks that are going to change the world. And so I'm honored to spend a little time with you this morning. If there's no questions, certainly open to that, but if there's not, I'd love to share just one last poem that I think everybody might enjoy. Is that okay, Megan?
Yeah, let's see. I saw someone unmute. Did someone have a question?
I would love to ask a question. Yeah. Sure. Hey, Susan, thank you. Gosh, yeah, this was so just inspiring. And it was great for my lunch break today. So thank you. One of the things that really struck me is that you really seemed to have a really good grasp on what your very diverse and at times like opposing interest might be. And, even in the face of people telling you that you couldn't or those didn't match. And so, I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of curious about how you cultivated such different interests in yourself, like over your life. I mean, maybe they were just things that came naturally to you, but I don't know if you have thoughts on that idea of just how you were able to cultivate such diverse interest in yourself.
That's a great question. It is. I mean, I think part of it was that I circle back. I think we all have a point in life we can look back and think that was my most authentic self. And maybe you even have a photograph of it. I have it. It's me leaning on the bridge of my grandparents' farm, and I was about 7. And I was just raw, Susan Sparks Unplugged, honey, get out of my way stage. And I know we've all been there. And then, the world starts coming and taking it away, and we start to slump and lose kind of that shine and that big vision. I circle back to that moment and think, what did I love back then? And I loved, like I said, I kind of had that spiritual bent, thought of myself as a preacher. I loved the comedy. I was kind of a funny little kid. I thought about, how did I communicate? What did I gravitate towards? What did I like to read? What people did I hang out with? Who did I admire? What were my dreams? What did I daydream about? And to me, that kind of formed the foundation of where it all spread from. I love the idea. I read one time that Serena Williams, it talks about the importance of cross training. And I think that's kind of what I'm talking about in life, cross training. Serena Williams actually said that she watched the footwork of Muhammad Ali to learn the most about her tennis game. And I thought, what a great lesson. We think about, I've got to go to law school and become a lawyer. Well, yeah, you do need the law degree, but there's so much other stuff that can give you insight and training. I mean, as a preacher, I study, spoken word poets. As a preacher, I look at the Food Channel because, you're preparing food and how do you do it in a way that people want to consume it? There's just so many aspects of life that don't seem to naturally connect, but they absolutely have something to teach, and they make us broader, more interesting, more thoughtful, and help us come at the world in a more creative way? It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Susan, we have 2 questions in the chat before you share your poem. One is, what is the best way to follow your work? So everybody got your website in the email and on our website, but is there other ways that people can follow you or follow your work?
Well, whoever wrote that question, just give me like a bank account so I can wire you money, because that's thoughtful of you to ask. Thank you. Yeah, the website susansparks.com. The sermons are broadcast every week on, if you're a religious person and interested in that, they're on YouTube every week. They're pre-recorded. We're still not live on site yet. I have a YouTube channel where I put up what I call a 5-minute virus-free Friday. On Fridays, a little 5-minute inspiration. On the website also are 5 books that I've got out there. One's coming out Mother's Day that I'm really excited about, called Love, a Tiara, and a Cupcake. That's how to engage life, how to find happiness within times of despair, which kind of relevant for today. So you might, the website's got everything on there, and you can also email me through the website too. So thanks for reaching out and asking that.
Thank you. And the last question before you move on is, someone said they love the signs, and would you be willing to share those again? Is that something you could share with me and I could send to the group?
Of course.
Sure. I knew Susan would say yes, but I wanted to ask her. So we'll share the pictures of those signs with you after this via email.
Yeah. There also, you could follow the church on Facebook. It's Madison Avenue Baptist Church. And on Twitter, they're very active on Twitter, and the signs get posted there every week. So they're very fun.
Great. Well, that's the last question I have. So if you want to share your poem, I think that would be a good way to end us today.
Well, I'll just say thank you guys so much for joining. It was an honor to be with you today. And I want to share with you one of my favorite poems that I think kind of captures the gist of what we were talking about today. It's called The George Gray by Edgar Lee Masters. I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with a furled sail at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sail and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat longing for the sea and yet afraid. I wish you all many, many blessings in your career path and your personal lives, and I hope that you will please, please keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Susan, for coming from New York and spending your day with us. Everybody, thank you for taking an hour out of your day. We hope you will enjoy any other events you've signed up for this week, or if you haven't, there's still time to sign up for events later on this week. Also in your email, you got information about our closing sessions. If that's something you're interested in, please register for that as well. Again, if you want to follow Susan, there's her website. You can contact her. If you have any other questions to pass along, feel free to email me as well. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks.